Ambassador. Welcome back, everybody, to Just the News, No Noise. That memorandum of understanding, of course, is still on the table after last weekend's military strikes between the U.S. and Iran. And yesterday, President Trump said, quote, the denuclearization of Iran is moving along well. So joining us to break all of this down and more is former ambassador to Denmark, Carla Sands. Ambassador, thanks so much for being with us.
It's great to be with you both.
We are happy to talk to you about this. We are, I guess by my estimations, about a quarter of the way into this memorandum of understanding. A lot of folks are, Chicken Little, saying the sky is going to fall eventually. This is never going to make it through. But President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, along with the envoy, they seem very optimistic about it. What have the last few days told you about what the next 6 weeks or so is going to look like?
Well, Qatar is saying that progress is being made, so finally getting some technical breakthrough. But I'm looking at how Iran is behaving day to day, and we can see that ships are going through. I think 121 ships have gone through since Monday, so progress there. But Iran is threatening the ships that don't take their designated approved routes, and they're saying they're going to be met with violence. They're going to have an immediate and violent response. And so President Trump's not going to tolerate that. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright says that it's because of our great U.S. military that all these ships are going through. But I think that President Trump is going to have to go back at it because of still the IRGC is making these threats. And another point regarding this, like if you look at the whole military effort that President Trump has made to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, which is his stated goal, our U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker, has said that he's actually threatening ahead of next week's NATO summit, saying our allies cannot block us from overflights, from access to our bases. He's basically saying, don't do it again. And I think it's a very strong warning that needed to be made because we saw how many NATO allies have behaved during this conflict while President Trump makes sure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, just remarkable. They are interlinked. You don't think of Iran and Europe as interlinked, but it certainly was in the last 3 months with the behavior. What do you expect for the NATO summit? I think it's going to be a long, hot few days in Europe. They're going to feel the heat of President Trump. What do you think the president can come away from? Is it beginning the withdrawal of troops and telling Europe you're on your own?
Well, John, I would never get ahead of what the president's going to say to our allies, but I will say this. Europe has been so aggressive about not having air conditioning and embracing this net zero energy agenda and how their people are suffering and literally thousands are dying from heat stroke because they're not allowed to have air conditioning. Even in the UK, they're fining people that have the AC on in their car when it's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So the insanity of the net zero has really shown its head here in Europe and the UK during this heat spell that they're having. Summer happens every year. Sorry, folks. And it's not American air conditioning that's causing Paris to be hot, even if their deputy mayor is claiming such. So I think that President Trump is probably going to address the energy issue because he'll have so many Europeans in the room. But then he's going to talk about NATO and how do we save it. I don't think it's going to look the same in the future as it does now, because we can see nations like Japan stepping up in ways that NATO allies that are current, like Spain, are declining to do and doing it really I would say in an non-diplomatic way and certainly not a collegial way.
Yeah.
Ambassador, I want to ask you about global sentiment towards the United States, not just in NATO nations. You mentioned Japan, and Japan is reportedly going to have a major celebration in Tokyo commemorating our 250th as a longtime ally of ours. But as our nation approaches its 250th birthday, you look at the conflicts that are happening overseas, but also the successes of this administration, the peace through strength posture that has sustained President Trump through his first and now his second term. What do you see as the global sentiment towards the United States, especially with our background as, with OEF and OIF, a lot of wars that percolated over the last 50 years, but now we are finally in a place where we're not watching a lot of pots boiling across the world.
Well, that's because of President Trump's strong peace through strength stance. I haven't seen this since President Reagan's time. Now, I was really young, but you got the sense that the United States was respected around the globe and that other nations respected and behaved in a different way than when you have a weak president like an Obama or a Biden, where they just begin to take advantage because they know there are no real red lines. But I'll say this, I'm really honored. I'm going to be able to bless our country and the people there in the National Mall on the 4th of July. And so I'm excited to share the 4th of July celebration with all Americans. But the world is celebrating with us because the United States stands for freedom around the world. And if you look at our allies, our traditional allies, some of them really look down on what America stands for. And I'm not talking about the soccer fans that are here for European football, the FIFA, the World Cup. I'm talking about a lot of people in Europe. They look down on us and think that they're better because they live these kind of more indolent lives. They work fewer hours. They feel virtuous or sanctimonious because they don't use as much power as American. I think that the United States shows the way for prosperity and living like our children are going to hopefully live better lives than we live because of American innovation and our free market, our capitalism, and that should be celebrated. And we can see places in the Middle East or Asia, some of the Eastern European countries really being excited for us. And then we can see those some in Europe, in Western Europe, our traditional allies, not standing with the United States. And oftentimes, I think it's because of Trump derangement syndrome. They hate President Trump. And so therefore, they're just not going to celebrate with us. And they're going to try to wait him out. That's what I see across the globe.
Yeah, just remarkable. What a missed opportunity for for those who aren't smart enough to engage us. Before we let you go, I want to ask a little bit about some of the levers that President Trump has in negotiating with Europe in this next round. Obviously, troops are a big part of it. Another one that doesn't get enough attention, but Europe has increasingly become dependent on American LNG and liquid natural gas. We are literally powering Europe. That's something you helped get started when you were an ambassador in the theater. What role does that play in negotiations, and how dependent has Europe become on our great clean natural gas?
Well, John, we love selling our natural gas to our allies, and we want them to buy our gas. I used to, when I was serving in Denmark as ambassador, I used to say, buy U.S. LNG, not Russian gas. And they would say, well, it's more expensive. And I would say, well, it's freedom gas. That's the price of freedom. And that is the price of freedom. But what President Trump has done is he has made us the most powerful energy country in the world. We're producing more than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined now, and that is thanks to President Trump and his policies. So I'm really excited that we can help power Europe. And of course, they buy gas from other providers. But the fact is, it's important to have sources of energy from a multitude of different providers, because that builds just more security. We never want to rely on one provider. And so they're buying American gas, and we can't build the terminals fast enough. Some of President Trump's first term ambassadors helped put those gas terminals in that are now being used so that Europe doesn't need to rely on, for instance, Russian or Iranian gas. In fact, I think China is now the only customer for Iranian gas because of the sanctions on Iran that President Trump and his administration have put in place.
Amazing.
Ambassador, before we let you go, in the last 48 hours or so, Russia launched one of its largest attacks on Kiev. Democrats want to hang this around President Trump's neck, this conflict that began under Joe Biden. What do you foresee for the future of this? President Trump has tried to engage and tried to simmer tensions on both sides, but they just seem hell-bent on continuing this. What needs to happen?
Well, just like I talked about weakness in the White House inviting conflict, that's exactly what happened, where this invasion by Russia into Ukraine happened during Joe Biden's time. And their first invasion back in 2014 happened under Barack Obama. So thank God President Trump is there. And I really feel for the people of Ukraine, but they have stepped up. They're actually innovating new ways to wage war and defend themselves for the 21st century. They found ways to make cheap drones and do high volume drones. And so they're actually gaining some territory back, which who would have thought that a year or two ago? So they're doing well. Russia's now attacked them. It's such a shame, but Ukraine is they're going to answer that. Russia is having problems getting enough energy, fuel, even in the gas stations for the people of Russia. So I think Vladimir Putin has some problems on his hands. His population is not going to put up with fuel shortages and losing power in their major cities. That's, it's a modern country and they just won't tolerate it. So we'll see what happens. I hope that President Trump's able to wrap up this war soon. I know China holds the key, and President Trump can certainly encourage Xi Jinping and his administration to lean on Russia to end and stop funding it. Basically, stop sending supplies to Russia, so that Russia is no longer able to prosecute this war in Ukraine.
Amazing.
Former ambassador to Denmark, Carla. We love getting your perspective on all of these conflicts. We appreciate you being here, and happy 250 to you. We'll see you on the National Mall.
Thanks. See you there.